and get in God's word. Or at least my joke, and then God's word. This is one I've talked about before. It goes really well with the message. We're going to talk about Gideon and his fleece this morning. So that'll be Judges chapter 6 when we get there. But first one, it's a story I always love. I've referenced it before. I might even read it before. But it says, a storm descends on a small town, and the downpour soon turns into a flood. As the waters rise, the local preacher kneels in prayer in the church porch, surrounded by water. By and by, one of the townsfolk comes up the street in a canoe. Better get in, preacher. The waters are rising fast. No, says the preacher, I have faith in the Lord. He will save me. Still the waters rise. Now the preacher is up on the balcony, wringing his hands in supplication, when another guy zips up in a motorboat. Come on, preacher. We need to get you out of here. The levee's going to break any minute. Once again, the preacher is unmoved. I shall remain. The Lord will see me through. After a while, the levee breaks. The flood rushes over the church until only the steeple remains above water. Preacher's up there clinging to the cross when a helicopter descends out of the clouds and a state trooper calls down to him through a megaphone. Grab the ladder, preacher. This is your last chance. Once again, the preacher insists the Lord will deliver him. And predictably, he drowns. A pious man, the preacher goes to heaven. After a while, he gets an interview with God, and he asks the Almighty, Lord, I had unwavering faith in you. Why didn't you deliver me from that flood? And God shakes his head. What did you want from me? I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter. We ask for signs. God gives us signs. We say, that's not the right sign. Well, that's what we're going to read about in Gideon. And Sophie, I'll save your joke for maybe another day. When we talk about Gideon, we talk about Gideon and his fleece. You know, he lays his fleece down. He asks for a sign from God. If you know the story from Judges chapter 6 is where we'll be reading if you want to go ahead and turn over to there. And you wonder, okay, what's a fleece? You know, we all might not be sheep farmers that shear our own sheep. You know, I'm assuming probably not. A fleece of wool is a natural fiber that covers the skin of sheep and similar mammals. The fibers are collected via shearing and processed into the fabric we know simply as wool. The term wool fleece refers to this unprocessed wool. Fleece can also refer to the coat of wool covering a wood-bearing animal such as a sheep. However, if you're talking about fabrics, then fleece is usually made of synthetic materials and is not real wool. So when we're talking about Gideon laying out his fleece, that's what his fleece is. Judges chapter 6, verse 36, reading from the New King James Version, tells us, So Gideon said to God, If you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said, look, I shall put a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew on the fleece only, and it is dry on all the ground, then I shall know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said. And it was so. When he rose early the next morning and squeezed the fleece together, he wrung the dew out of the fleece in a bowl full of water. Then Gideon said to God, Do not be angry with me, but let me speak just once more. Let me test, I pray, just once more with the fleece, let it now be dry only on the fleece, but on all the ground let there be dew. And God did so that night. It was dry on the fleece only, but there was dew on all the ground. So what we've got here, we've got a time in Israel that's kind of a sad time, really. We just had the time when the children of Israel went into the promised land. Moses led them there, and then Joshua took over. And while Joshua was there, they lived right in the eyes of the Lord. Judges is a whole book about how they turned their back on God. And then God brings them back with we're talking about a judge. Now, when we're talking about a judge, we're not talking about somebody in their black robes sitting there with a gavel hammering. We're talking about a judge as in being more of a leader of Israel. They went through a group of leaders. And they went through all over the place. And most of these guys were very flawed characters. And they went through some women also, which in that time, that was kind of odd that they would ask a woman to lead the children of Israel. And I'm not sexist, so don't be glaring at me, women. It's okay. I'm just telling you what the historical time period was. That in that time, a man was to lead Israel, and for them to not find any man worthy, how sad a time was that? They couldn't find one single man that could do the job. So what do they always say? If you can't find a good man to do the job, you ask a woman, right? That was a sad time, though, that they could not find people to lead the children of Israel. I mean, how sad is this? So it came time for Gideon's time. I'm going to ask you, is it okay to question God? Is it okay to question God? Well, now, wait a second. When we say question God, are you questioning for guidance? And then once he gives you the answer, do you do what he tells you to? Are you questioning because what you're doing, God, is not right? I love it. The all-powerful God of the universe, you're wrong. I don't think so. Now, you may not like what he asks you to do, and it may not make sense, but sometimes you just got to go out there and do it. It's what's being told. Gideon is asking God for a sign. He's looking for a sign as to whether he should lead Israel or not. Will this work? I've seen enough signs, God. I've seen everything else that you've done in my life, but I just haven't seen enough. I just don't know. After Joshua, then, like I said earlier, Israel went through this time of turning away from God and worshiping other gods. They could not seem to rely on God and follow the true God. No, we say, Israel could not seem to rely on God and follow the true God. Is there times in your life where you can't seem to rely on God and follow the true God? Have we been there? We always like to point fingers, right? And you know how I am. I like to point fingers like this. 5 going at you, none back at me. But still, I'm not a robot. 3 coming back at me, right? Has there times where you have trouble relying on God? I do. I admit it from the pulpit. There's times where I just need to turn it over to God. I struggle daily with anxiety, and it comes stronger. And not only do I struggle with it, then my family struggles with it. And it'll be the stupidest thing that will set me off, and I will get hold of it, and I can't let go of it because it just bothers me. And I'm like, why is it bothering me? I'm a child of God. Why does this thing doesn't matter? And somebody else would say, that's crazy. I'll say, yeah, I'm crazy. Because I can't let it go. That anxiety grips me. Just turn it over to God. And then I stand here and tell you, you need to turn it over to God. And I'm thinking, well, I don't turn it over to God. How can I tell you that? How am I worthy to tell you that from this pulpit? I struggle with that, but I'm not going to tell you. And any pastor or somebody gets up here and tell you they're perfect, they have no problems, they're lying to you. For some reason, whatever gain they're trying to get. Don't let them tell you, we are as imperfect as you are. Just God has called us to deliver the word from here, but you are called to deliver the word in every day of your entire life. I can't go and reach the people that you can reach. That's why we're in this together, and God doesn't call us. I always love my life lessons. My Bible says one of the main life lessons they fall back on is that Christians are not called to do this alone. We are called to do it together, and that's what we rely on other ones. So Gideon, this is what he's being asked to do. Just lead Israel. Not an easy task, obviously, because, everybody around them, it's kind of like today in Israel. In Israel today, if you go to Israel, everyone around them hates them. They don't just dislike them. They hate them and want to kill them. That's the way it was in this time of Israel. Now remember, they went and took their land. God gave it to them. These people that they took it from were not Christians of today's Christians. It wasn't Christians of that day. That didn't come until Christ came to earth. But they weren't of Israel, so if somebody comes, takes your land, takes everything you got until you get off, you're going to be kind of mad at them. That's what we're looking at. We're not looking at an easy task, but God said, look, I'm giving you this task, and I've already went ahead and given you the glory. That's what this book of Judges is about. So now Gideon's turn came to lead. Now, think about this. Have you ever been asked to do something by God or someone else and you just aren't sure? Hey, you need to do this, but boy, am I good enough? Can I handle this? Can I do what the task is? That's where Gideon's at. He's just not sure. You ask God for a sign as to whether you're making the right direction or decision. Have you ever asked him for a sign? God, if you'll only give me this, I'll do it. Or, if you ate something and you're trying to get home to the bathroom, God, if I get home to the bathroom this time, I'll never eat that again. And what's the next time they give you the food to eat? You eat too much and you're miserable. Oh, I'm miserable again. God, if I can just make it that far, I won't do it again. Right? So they say, well, God made it. So what? He gave me a sign, right? Because why? We all hate to go. We don't want to go the wrong way. I try to tell my kids sometimes, you got to make a decision in life. Even if you make the wrong decision in life, at least you know you've ruled out the wrong decision. The worst thing you can do is make no decision. We say that in business. The worst thing you can do in our business is make no decision, because then you don't know what was wrong. You don't know what was right, but you don't know what was wrong. You've got to make a decision, but you hate to go the wrong way. But that's how you rule out the wrong way. We just can't sit and do nothing. We've got to find what's better and do what's right. Because in life, really, there's very few decisions that you can't fix. Truthfully, what do we go out there tomorrow that we can't fix the next day? We worry about that. There's one important decision that you have to get right. You have to know, sitting here today or on Facebook, on our video, whether you're going to heaven or not. And it has to be 100% decision, right. You have to be for sure. Because where you die, don't let anybody fool you. Well, I'll die, but then there'll be a second chance after my death that I can come back and I'll be able to fix myself in this judgment and, it'll work out. No. While you die is how you lay. I mean, wherever you fall, that's where you are going, heaven or hell. You can't change the facts of your life once you pass away. The only thing you can change about your life is right now that you are living. That you be ready to meet God. So Gideon, he's being asked to do something for God, and it is a very big deal. What we got to do is we got to make sure when we're asked to do something of God, it's actually God talking to us. And it's not last night's chili dog talking to us. That's what Pastor Glenn always says. If somebody asks you to run through the wall, you run through the wall if that's God asking you. But if it's not God, you're going to end up with a headache, a broken arm, and a lot of pain. And that wall's still going to be there. You've got to make sure it's of God. But that way, if it is of God, it's going to be successful. During these times, the Israelites were not in charge either. So you say, well, Gideon, go do it. No, they were being hoarded over, because in this time period, what would happen is they'd rise up a leader and they'd take over and they'd win for about 15 years, 20 years. That leader would die and then the others would come back in. And they became like their slaves. They were ruled over. Now, the one thing about it, you got to remember, when they went to the promised land, what happened? God cleared the land for them, right? So what would have happened had they kept their eyes on God? We would have never got to this point in Judges. If they just would have kept their eyes on God. We have to keep our eyes on God. The only time it really messes up is when we don't keep our eyes on God. We were teasing, Angie and I have been married like, what will be, 29 years this year? You're not going to tell me, are you? When we got married, again, I have stomach issues, I ate the wrong thing at the rehearsal, so I had to go to the bathroom, so I missed the rehearsal. So in our wedding, I'm sitting here, and I'm looking at the pastor intently, making sure I get the word right. Somebody said afterwards, you married the pastor and not your wife. You didn't even look in her eyes. I said, well, what happened was I took my eyes off of him when I needed to memorize, and I didn't put my eyes on her. She was the important one, not the person delivering the sermon. But what happened? If you take your eyes off the important goal, you take your eyes off God, and you're going to end up going down that wrong path. Make sure you keep your eyes on God. And had they done that, they wouldn't be going through this. So he comes up with a test for God. God didn't say, Gideon, take this fleece, lay it down, and do this test. Read it. It wasn't God's idea to do this. God already told him what he was going to do, and he already told him he'd be successful. God just said, do it. Gideon said, wait, I need a test. Can you imagine? Hey, God, I'm going to test you. See if you're right. Next step, you do that today. Your next step ought to be, whoo, because that lightning's going to hit right there. Get out of the way because it's coming. We don't need to be testing God. If God tells you to do it, do it. It wasn't God's decision. That's what's coming from Gideon. He could have just trusted God and did what he was asked, but his faith wavered. And you say, well, my faith hasn't wavered. Has your faith ever wavered? Can you say, I know when we do if you see the MVP Mondays that Taylor's done with the leadership of the church, and one of the questions on that handout she gives us, and everybody moans because everybody hates handouts. I don't want to fill that in. One question is, have you ever thought about turning away from God's ministry? And you think, well, that's kind of a rough question for this simple questionnaire, but really it's a good thought. Have you ever thought of telling God, and again, we all have ministries. Every one of you sitting here has a ministry for God. You do, because you are a Christian and you are out there among people that are not Christians, and your ministry is to show them a light in the world. So has your faith ever wavered? Wouldn't you love, here in this case, though, to just have God tell you what to do? Have you ever done that? Or have you ever been a parent and your kids say, I don't know what to do? Bradley was asking me the other day, he had a couple job offers, and it's starting to get real with him because, his Marine stuff's getting done in June, and he's graduating in May, and all of a sudden he's realized, wow, I put this real world off as far as I can push it back. And I told him, I said, well, son, this job's this, and I'm thinking the whole time, one job's in Carmel and the other's in Nashville, Tennessee, and I like to see my son occasionally, so I think Carmel, and, I'm thinking, well, as a dad, I'm going to push him in this direction. But I'm trying to give him the good advice and give him advice. But what did I end up on this phone call that we talked for 10 or 15 minutes? I said, son, the thing is, I can't tell you what to do. You have to make that decision because I can't base everything into what's going on. Now he started looking at Nashville's cost of living and decided Carmel might look a little bit better. Because there's a difference there. But wouldn't you love to do that with God? God, what am I supposed to do with my life? Please tell me. Boy, wouldn't that be nice? And God said, this, and you just go out and do it, and you're in great shape. That's not the way it works. He can't just tell you what to do, but he can guide you just as you are guided by your earthly father or mentor or somebody in your life that said, hey, this might be the good decision. But they still couldn't tell you what to do because if they told you what to do, those of you that are a little more rebellious, you would have probably done the opposite. You can't tell me what to do. I'll go out and make my life miserable. I'll show you. I'm going to marry that person in spite of you. And then it's like, oh, I'm miserable. Well, what do you want? Those of you that are rebellious, no, I'm not rebellious. I'm the one that stayed in line and did exactly what my mommy told me to. So that's good. And my mom loves me to this day. So what's he do? The first night, he takes this fleece out and he asks God to only make the fleece wet by morning. That would have been really, cool test. Put the fleece out, you lay it out. The dew comes down, it doesn't hit and he asks the fleece to only make the fleece wet, the first test. Everything else will be dry but that fleece. So God does what he asks and gives him a really clear sign. Here it is. You asked for it. Here it is. I'm going to make it clear for you. Go on and do what you should. The fleece was so wet. Don't you love it, though, when God does give you a sign, he makes it so utterly clear? This fleece was so wet that you could wring it out into a bowl of water, and it filled the bowl. That was how clear this sign was. He wrung it out, and it filled a bowl of water in the morning. Shouldn't this been enough for Gideon, but is what God has done for us been enough to convince us? The question is, I saw a trailer in the movie that said that Judas, they asked Judas, he's taking his 30 pieces of silver to betray God. And they said, well, don't you believe? And he said, I believe, I've seen enough to believe that Jesus is the Messiah. And he says that. And they said, well, why are you still betraying him? And they said, well, I guess I haven't seen quite enough. Have we seen enough? I have. I've seen enough. Have you seen enough? That should have been enough. See, about what I wrote here. Don't judge Gideon because we can be that same way. So this is a very clear sign, but was not enough. So he asked for another sign with a fleece. Okay, God, I heard you the first time. You said to do this. It's not enough. I'm going to ask again. You don't like the answer. What do your kids do? Hey, Dad, can I do this? No. Goes to Mom. Mom, can I do this? Yes. They're going to play against each other, right? Didn't like the first answer, so I'm going to go find the second answer because I think the second answer might be what I want to hear. Might not be good for you, but boy, yeah, we were playing them back and forth. Should have been enough for the first sign, but he wants a second sign. He had no business asking God again for another sign, but he did it anyway. Because what's he saying, verse 39? I like this. Don't be angry with me. Don't you love when somebody says, don't be angry with me? So you're saying I should be angry with you, and you know I should be angry with you. That's what you're saying. Don't be angry. I always hate when don't be angry with me. Well, now I'm mad, and I don't even know why. But I know you just told me I should be mad about something. He says that. He already knows that he's got the sign, and he shouldn't be asking. He had no business asking. He knew he was wrong. See, when you ask and seek and pray to God, accept the answer and do God's will. And one thing I've learned in my life, when I say God's will be done, I better mean God's will and not mine. Because how often do we say, well, will God's will be done that my loved one be healed? And then when God doesn't heal him, how can you do that to me, God? Well, you said my will be done. You think about it, when Jesus healed Lazarus and he walked out the tomb and said, Lazarus, come forth, with a strong voice, and he was loosed. Jesus could have healed Lazarus before he died. But see, God's will was that people see that Lazarus was loose from his sin. That's the difference. We don't understand God's will. We don't get it, and we end up maybe like a doubting Thomas, and we just doubt everything because of what we've seen in our life. When you ask, seek, and pray, accept God's will. Just make sure the answer comes from God. A lot of times, again, we don't like that answer, so we think, well, that wasn't from God. So the next night, he asked God to do the opposite, make the fleece dry and the ground wet. So it happened. And he did it again. And if we read on, we're not going to read today, but read chapter 7 about Gideon and his victory with an amazing 300 men against a multitude of an enemy. You see, Gideon should not have stipulated how God would deliver his will. We ask God to make it clear, but we should let God show us his will and his way. Remember, we are not God. We should remember he is all-powerful in our lives. Trust his word when we receive it. That's the way we should do it. Now, when we do receive God's word and we make a vow to God, again, we're trying to control God. If we read about Jephthah is a really sad story. He made a vow to God. Because why? Because he made this vow because he didn't trust God again also. God gave him the victory and he didn't understand it. If we flip over to Judges chapter 11, starting in verse 29, the story of Jephthah. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah, and he passed through Gilead and Manasseh and passed through Mizpah of Gilead. And from Mizpah of Gilead he advanced toward the people of Ammon. And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord and said, if you will indeed deliver the people of Ammon into my hands, then it will be that whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me, when I return in peace from the people of Ammon, shall surely be the Lord's, and I will offer it up as a burnt offering. So Jephthah advanced toward the people of Ammon to fight against them, and the Lord delivered them into his hands, and he defeated them from Aror as far as Minnith, 20 cities, and to Abel-Keramim with a very great slaughter. Thus the people of Ammon were subdued before the children of Israel. And here's the sad part about what his vow did, because he didn't trust God. When Jephthah came to his house at Mizpah, there was his daughter coming out to meet him with timbrels and dancing, and she was his only child. Besides her, he had neither son nor daughter. And it came to pass when he saw her that he tore his clothes and said, alas, my daughter, you have brought me very low. You are among those who trouble me, for I have given my word to the Lord, and I cannot go back on it. So she said to him, my father, if you have given your word to the Lord, do to me according to what has gone out of your mouth, because the Lord has avenged you of your enemies, the people of Ammon. Then she said to her father, let this thing be done for me. Let me alone for 2 months, that I may go and wander on the mountains and bewail my virginity, my friends and I. So he said, go. And he sent her away for 2 months, and she went with her friends and bewailed her virginity on the mountains. And it was so at the end of 2 months that she returned to her father, and he carried out his vow with her, which he had vowed. She knew no man. And it became a custom in Israel that the daughters of Israel went 4 days each year to lament the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite. God bless the reading of his word. See, Jephthah had gotten a clear answer from God, and what did he do? He said, nope, I need more. I need to make a vow. A vow. See, he wasn't required to give that to God. God's already given you everything in your life that you need. He's already put it there in front of you for you to just take it. He'd already made Jephthah the judge of his people, so why did he need to make a vow? But sometimes we'll do the same thing. God, again, if you get me out of this situation, I'll never do it again, even though we may do that. Jephthah and Gideon both needed confirmation from God. They needed it because of their lack of faith. Our faith is so important. Don't lack your faith. Don't lack in what God has for you, because God has everything for you. They needed it because they just lacked. We often forget that God goes ahead of us and the battle has already won. That's what we get. What are you concerned about? You're concerned about what you are going to have to go through. We have to continue to remember that whatever we have to go through, God's already went there before us and taken care of it. Easily said, right? Not easily done. He's not asking for us to give any more than ourselves. What will God do with anything that we give him? Gold, remember, I always love this. Gold is used for paving stones in heaven. So if you're storing up gold on earth, it's not going to do you any good when you get to heaven. I was like these people. In my casket, I put all my money and prizes, and you know what ended up? A bunch of money and prizes that just withered away. They put you in a car that's your favorite. Some guy got buried in his favorite car, and what happened? They opened it up. That car was rusty. Didn't go to heaven with him. Why? He didn't need it. We don't need what we're trying to get. So there wasn't a need for a vow to be made because God had already taken care of it. Here you can see some of the ramifications of what happens when we make a vow to God. Don't ever take a vow you make to God lightly. You shouldn't be out there making vows to people that you aren't going to fall through. In other words, don't make promises that you're going to break to people. But if you make a promise to God, do it with the most seriousness that you're going to follow through with it. That's your faith. That's the vow that you should make. You better follow through. If someone tells you they have changed, but you repeatedly don't see any change, how long will you believe them? You say, I've changed, so you should be changed. And you sure don't want to lie to God. Does it really matter if you lie to God? I'm gonna do this, God, but then you don't really do it. You think God doesn't already know? You think, well, he already knows my heart, so I don't have to do it. No. We're going down a logic trail, and I just might have got lost myself. God does know your heart, but he wants you to confess your heart, and he wants your heart to be pure. And even though he does know it, that doesn't mean that we just do it anyway. That's not what that means. It doesn't mean that he knows my heart, so it doesn't matter. That's what God had, he asked his disciples. He would ask Peter something, and Peter said, well, you already know. What's it matter? No, it does matter. So when we say God knows our heart, it does not give us free license to do anything we want. God knows that I love him. So if I sin, then he knows I didn't really mean it. How often have you said that? Well, you know what I mean. Well, maybe I don't know what you mean. You've got to show it. You got to avoid sin. That's why, as we read in these stories in Judges, the children of Israel struggle so much. Why did they struggle? Because they leaned on other altars. They leaned on other gods. And I always like in the Bible, when you read your Bible, be cognizant of the fact that the big G is our God. Little g's are the other gods. Why? Because the little g's don't matter. Even when I type up my sermon on Microsoft Word, it's even smart enough to know, hey, God should have a big G right there. If it can figure it out, we can figure it out. But we can make our lives so much harder if we don't follow through with what we tell God we will do. If God tells us to do something, we don't have to lay the fleece out. If God asks us to do something, we don't have to make a vow. Can you imagine what Jephthah just did? He gave up his daughter, and he didn't have to do that because God had already taken care of that. And what happened? And why were they in this position anyway? Because God asked them. It always bothered me when I would read, and God would say, go in there, and you have to kill the men, women, children, animals, everything, completely take it out. Why? Because if you don't take it out, sin's going to be like cancer. And some of you have had to go through cancer. And you know what? If you don't get the cancer completely out of your body, it comes back. You have to completely take it out. If you don't get sin completely out of your body, it's going to come back. Amen. Can't leave it linger there. Don't give it an inch. Don't think, well, I've done enough and that's good and I don't have to do any more, because you've got to get it out of your body. Sin cannot reside in you in any amount. And you say, well, I don't do the big sins. I don't murder. I don't do any, the 10 Commandments. I don't break any of those, but I do this sin. Well, this sin can become this sin and then the next one. But you know what? Sin will still take you to hell. We put degrees on sin. God doesn't. So we've got to drive it out. And had they driven all the people that they were told to, this would have never happened in the Old Testament. Jephthah's unnecessary oath cost him greatly. See, he didn't think the first thing that he would see when he came back was his daughter. But he had faith in God and his word, and the oath he made was completely unnecessary had he had that faith. This is what doubt does to us. When we doubt God, we miss out on a lot of blessings, and we miss out on being guided in the right direction. This lack of faith, it can cost you a great price. All God does is he requires obedience from us. The vows, epic acts of sacrifice, it won't change God's plan. He just wants obedience, and he wants your love, and he wants you to follow him. Instead, if you follow Gideon and Jephthah's case, it just shows a lack of faith. And that lack of faith will show God you're not ready for what he has for you. Again, when we get up here and we talk about subjects, it's not easy. It's not always easy. We may struggle with something with that, like Tony was talking about in Sunday school, a health issue. Stop eating. And sometimes we can't stop eating even though we know it's harming us. When we talk about issues, I'm not saying that it's easy, but as we get closer to God and grow, we have to get through those issues. We have to work on them. And don't let the devil tell you, well, you promised that you wouldn't use that profanity, and you do it tomorrow, and it's like, well, you're not saved. You're not worth anything. Just go and live out in the world. No, we work on it, and we try not to do that the next day. We try to go like our friend was here last couple weeks ago, and he said, I'm 1 day sober. We celebrate that 1 day, and we try to make it 2 days. And we hope that next week we aren't just the 1 day again. But we got to work on it. Satan will tell you you're worth nothing. Just give up and live for me. Why? Because that's what he wants. He wants to. Don't let anybody tell you, well, I'm going to go to hell so I can party with all my friends. It's not going to be a party in hell. It's not going to be a good place to be. And it's for eternity. And how long is eternity? Longer than my sermon. Even though you might be thinking that. Eternity is a very long time. We can't in our finite minds think about what eternity is. All we can do is think about what we do after we leave here. This afternoon, we go to work tomorrow, we go to school, we go to, that's all we can think about. We can't think about how long eternity is. That's why this decision is so important. Where are you spending that time? 70 years, 80 years. Some get 40 years, 45 years. Some don't. Some are taking it 20 years. We don't know what that time period is, but we know eternity is forever. That's where we have to be ready. That's what we have to be. That's why we come here every week, to make sure that we lift each other up and we try to make sure that we're on the road for God. That's the important place to be. If I could have musicians, please come to play. To wonder if God's will for you is correct, first thing you got to do, you got to get in here and you got to have a relationship with God. You've got to get yourself, what we say, right with God. We don't want to just throw out terms, what is right with God? That means that the Holy Spirit lives in your heart. And the Holy Spirit lives in your heart, and you're going to follow God. If you're not sure about that, we always say, what? Take care of that today, right? Today's a perfect day to start living for Him. Then after you do that, that's when you begin to seek God's will for your life. That's when the Holy Spirit lives in you, and you start to grow, and you start to see things change, and you start to get closer to Him. God will give you that direction in many ways. But as you get closer, you'll understand what His will is for you. So as you please stand. I ask you today, come to the Father today and receive what He has for you. As Wayne plays, please consider that. If you're not sure about your Christian life, or you're not sure of the direction that you're going in, now's a good time to do that. While you have some time and attention, and everything else can be put outside, and we can focus on Him now. Because I know how during life sometimes our focus can waver. I know we say we can multitask, but a lot of times we just aren't paying attention. Right here, we can take some time and think about it. Think about where God's at in your life, whether He's in your life, and if He's not in your life, please ask Him into your heart. But if He's there, we ask for direction. We can do this at any time too. Even when you leave here, you have time to go out in there and talk to God at any point that you want to.